It is a great honor to be here today. The judge's decision to reject the state's attorney, Lad Erickson's attempt to prosecute a journalist, in this case me, is a great vindication of the First Amendment and of our right to report. On September 3rd, the Democracy Now! Team came to North Dakota, to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, to the resistance camps, to cover this epic struggle. Native people on the front lines, particularly Native American women,
and Two-Spirit women,
who are taking on not only the Dakota Access Pipeline, but a global issue of climate justice, taking on the global issue of global warming. Democracy Now! Has been covering climate justice issues for the full 20 years that we have been broadcasting. We go to every UN climate summit. So often it's indigenous people on the front lines.
Always has.
We covered the Keystone XL pipeline. Now we're covering the Dakota Access Pipeline. And the important role of a journalist is to go to where the silence is. We should not be alone in the major media coming to cover this historic unification of Native Americans from more than 200 tribes from Latin America to the United States to Canada. All of the media should be there, given the scope of this struggle, and we encourage all of the media to come here. We certainly will continue to cover this struggle. It's not only to protect the water and land rights, but it's covering your right to speak, to be heard. We are not the only ones who have been charged. We faced misdemeanor. I faced misdemeanors. But I know there are a number of people who are going to court even as we speak here. Also important to point out other journalists who are being arrested. The state's attorney was attempting to stop journalism. The state's attorney must respect freedom of the press and the First Amendment. On September 3rd, we came to North Dakota and covered the Native Americans going down the road from the camp to plant their tribal flags at their burial ground. They were surprised to learn at their sacred ground, and I'm sure a number of you were there, that the Dakota Access Pipeline was actually actively excavating at that moment on this holiday weekend. They urged the bulldozers to stop. The security guards came out with their dogs and pepper spray. The dogs bit the protesters. Democracy Now! Videotaped the bloody dog with blood dripping from his mouth and his nose, biting not only protesters or protectors, the land and water protectors, but the Native Americans' horses as well. These images went viral. 14 million people almost immediately saw these images around the world. All of the networks then published, then played excerpts of that video. CBS Evening News, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, NPR, and it went on from there. We call that trickle-up journalism. The state cannot stop this journalism. The state must not stop this journalism. Violating the First Amendment is not good for North Dakota. It's not good for this country. I want to we together, and I want to point out my colleagues, the Democracy Now! Team, John Hamilton, who continues to film today, as he has been filming with us. Laura Gottesdiener. Laura, where are you? Laura, wave your hand. Who is tireless in her reporting on these issues. And Dennis Moynihan behind me, who is, this team was so critical in bringing out the story. I also want to thank Hani Massoud, and again, our lawyers Reed Brody and Tom Dixon. Most importantly, I want to thank everybody for being here, for showing up, for standing up for freedom of the press. And standing up for freedom of the press goes beyond journalism. Freedom of the press is about the public's right to know. That right to know is sacred. That's what makes a democracy meaningful, when you are able to make informed decisions. We've got to open up the media to everyone's voice. I see the media as a huge kitchen table that stretches across the globe, that we all sit around and debate and discuss the critical issues of the day. When you hear someone speak for themselves, a Lakota grandmother, an Ojibwe grandchild, it breaks down barriers. It challenges the caricatures and stereotypes that fuel the hate groups. It is so important that we open up this dialogue. You don't have to agree with what you hear, but you begin to understand where people are coming from. That's the beginning of peace. I think the media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Unfortunately, all too often it's wielded as a weapon of war, which is why we have to take the media back. Thank you for coming out here today. We will continue to cover what happens at the resistance camps, what happens in the reservation, what happens at the excavation sites, what happens behind the bars in the Mandan jail. One of the issues we've been covering now extensively just today is the number of people charged with low-level misdemeanors like, Dr. Sarah Jumping Eagle, the pediatrician on the reservation, on the Standing Rock Reservation, charged with disorderly conduct, brought to this jail and strip searched.
Wow.
The chair of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, the chair, Standing Rock Sioux's Dave Archambault, charged in a civil disobedience, brought to this jail and strip searched. It is very important that we cover all of these issues. More than 140 people have been arrested so far. Democracy Now! Will continue to be there, this daily grassroots global news hour. We send a shout out to the media at the camp, to Native media all over. It's so important that your voices are broadcast, that you capture what's happening on the ground as well. And we demand that the corporate media also come here and broadcast the voices of those who are on the front lines of democracy. Democracy Now! Is about movements. It's movements that make history. Thank you for being here, for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Jordan with the Young Turks. Can you tell me what happened in there?
The judge, in a very rare move, decided. Okay, we've got to come back. Okay. In a very rare move, decided not to affirm the prosecutor's request to bring riot charges against me. This is very rare. It's usually pro forma, rubber stamp, and he said no. So the case is over.
What does this do for journalists and democracy? You had said before this
is a vindication for all journalists. You know, we need to be able to report, and the state should not interfere.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.